The next day, Evelyn couldn't look Maria in the eyes. Every time she passed her in the hallway, guilt twisted in her chest. She watched the cameras again the following night, and this time, the scene broke her completely. Maria came home from her second job, yes, second job. She worked late at a laundromat after her shift ended. Exhausted, she stumbled into her small room and collapsed on the floor, sobbing softly. On the camera audio, Evelyn heard her whisper in Spanish, "Please, God, just help me keep this job. My son's medicine costs too much. I can't lose another one." Evelyn covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. This woman wasn't stealing. She was surviving. All the maids before, had they too been struggling silently while she lived in luxury, worrying about color-coordinated curtains and imported silverware? Her chest tightened painfully as she whispered, "What have I become?" It started small, barely noticeable. Around midnight, Maria entered the kitchen quietly, though her shift ended hours ago. Evelyn watched, curious. Maria opened the fridge, not to eat, but to wrap leftovers carefully in foil, tucking them neatly into a small cloth bag she carried. Evelyn frowned. "Stealing food," she whispered. But then Maria did something unexpected. She didn't hide the food in her purse or pockets. She simply walked to the back door, looked up at the ceiling camera, as if aware it was there, and whispered softly in Spanish. "Gracias, señor, for today's blessings. Please forgive me for taking this. It's for my children." Evelyn froze. Children? She hadn't mentioned any children. She watched as Maria stepped into the darkness outside, crossing the yard toward the security gate. The camera outside caught her stopping at a small figure waiting near the fence, a child. A thin boy, no older than 10, shivering in the cold. Maria knelt, wrapped a piece of bread in a napkin, and handed it to him. Then she kissed his forehead, whispering words Evelyn couldn't hear. The boy hugged her, then disappeared into the night. Evelyn's heart began to pound. She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes wide, her breath short. She watched Maria walk back into the house, wipe her tears, and quietly clean the counters again before returning to her room. And suddenly, Evelyn understood why the other maids had left. Because they had seen this too, the quiet suffering, the shame of stealing food not out of greed, but out of desperation. 2 days later, a new maid arrived, Maria Alvarez, a small woman in her late 40s, soft-spoken and polite. Her eyes carried warmth, but her hands trembled slightly when she spoke. "I've worked for families before," Maria said gently. "I'm quiet and fast. I won't cause any trouble." Evelyn nodded, assessing her. "That's fine, Maria. Just do your job well. I like order." Maria smiled. "Yes, ma'am." For the first few days, everything seemed perfect. The house sparkled, meals were ready on time, and Maria never complained. Evelyn felt relieved. Perhaps, finally, she'd found the right person. But on the 6th night, as Evelyn reviewed the camera feeds from her tablet, her entire world began to crack open. That evening, she sat in her glass-walled office, staring at the empty staff schedule. Her husband, always absorbed in meetings and business calls, barely noticed. "Robert," she said softly. "The maids keep leaving again. I think something strange is happening." Without looking up, he muttered, "Hire a better agency. Or double their pay." "It's not about money," she said, almost to herself. "Something else is going on. They look frightened. Or sad. Like they've seen something they shouldn't." He gave a distracted nod, clearly uninterested. So, Evelyn made her own decision. The next morning, she called a security company and had discreet cameras installed in several parts of the house, the kitchen, the hallway, and the maids' quarters. She told herself it was to protect the home, but deep down, she knew she was searching for answers. When the technicians left, Evelyn stood alone in her silent house. The cameras blinked red lights, recording everything. "I'll finally know the truth," she whispered. Millionaire wife installs camera to discover why maids keep quitting, breaks down when she sees the truth. From the outside, Evelyn Carter had everything anyone could dream of. Her mansion gleamed on the hill, marble floors reflected the golden chandeliers, and her husband's name, Robert Carter, was printed on the covers of business magazines every month. The world saw a woman who had it all: wealth, beauty, success, and status. But behind the glass walls of her perfect home, Evelyn lived in quiet frustration. It wasn't her husband or her money, it was her staff. No maid stayed longer than 3 months. Every time she thought she had found someone reliable, they'd suddenly quit, no explanation, no notice, just a short message in silence. "Do they think I'm hard to work for?" she would whisper to herself while adjusting a vase or polishing the already spotless counter. "I'm fair. I pay well. I don't shout." But inside, she wondered if maybe she wasn't as kind as she thought. One morning, after the 5th maid in 6 months abruptly quit, Evelyn's patience snapped. Something wasn't right, and she intended to find out what. Real wealth isn't measured by what you own, it's measured by what you give, how you see others, and how deeply you let compassion change you. Because sometimes, one act of understanding can transform not just a person's life, but your own soul forever. Years later, when Evelyn was interviewed by a magazine that once praised her for her wealth, she was asked, "What moment in your life changed you the most?" She didn't hesitate. "It was the night I watched a woman give her only piece of bread to her child, after cleaning my house all day. That was the night I learned that true wealth isn't counted in money, but in compassion." She paused, then smiled at the camera. Sometimes you need to install a camera to see others, but the real miracle happens when you finally see yourself. A year later, on a bright spring morning, Evelyn opened a letter. It was from the Domestic Workers Union. They wanted to honor her for funding a new welfare program that helped hundreds of families like Maria's. As she read, her hands trembled. She thought of the first night she watched that camera feed, the judgment in her heart, the ignorance in her eyes, and how that single moment of truth had changed everything. Later that evening, she stood by her window, watching the lights of the city below. Her husband came up behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did something good, Eve," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "No, Robert. She did. Maria showed me what goodness really looks like." Months passed. Daniel recovered well. Maria continued working for Evelyn, not as a servant, but as a friend. They often shared tea together in the garden, laughing about simple things. One afternoon, while they sat watching the sunset, Maria said, "You've changed, ma'am. The house feels different now." Evelyn smiled. "Maybe because I finally realized it was never the maids who were quitting, Maria." Maria tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Evelyn looked at her with misty eyes. "It was kindness. It kept quitting this house. And I'm just grateful it came back." Over the next weeks, Evelyn's life began to change in ways she never imagined. She arranged medical treatment for Daniel, paid off Maria's debts, and enrolled him in a good school. But she didn't stop there. She began visiting the local shelter, quietly donating food and supplies. She helped the agency that employed domestic workers, ensuring fair wages and safe conditions. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt alive, not because of what she owned, but because of what she could give. Her husband, Robert, at first was skeptical. "You can't save everyone, Evelyn," he said one evening. "No," she replied softly, "but I can stop being blind to the ones right in front of me." That night, she removed every camera from the house. She no longer needed them. She had learned to see with her heart. The next morning, Evelyn waited by the kitchen doorway. Maria walked in quietly, humming a lullaby as she began preparing breakfast. "Maria," Evelyn said gently. Maria turned, startled. "Oh. Good morning, ma'am. Evelyn hesitated. I saw something last night. Maria froze, her face draining of color. Ma'am, please. But before she could continue, Evelyn stepped forward and took her trembling hands. No. Don't be afraid. I'm not angry. Her voice broke. I didn't know. Maria's lips quivered. I'm sorry. I was wrong to take the food. My son, Daniel, he's sick. I couldn't. Evelyn's tears fell freely now. You don't have to explain. You shouldn't have to beg or steal to feed your child. Maria looked at her, confused. You're not firing me? Evelyn shook her head. No, Maria. I'm thanking you. That day, Evelyn did something she hadn't done in years. She drove to the poorer side of town. Maria sat quietly beside her, nervous, as they arrived at a crumbling apartment building. Inside, Maria's son Daniel lay on a thin mattress, his cheeks pale, his small chest rising and falling with effort. He smiled shyly when Evelyn entered. You must be Daniel, Evelyn whispered, kneeling beside him. Your mother talks about you. He nodded weakly. Mama says you're kind. Evelyn swallowed hard. She's wrong. But I want to be.